Good morning.
Good morning, good evening.
Good afternoon and good evening. Last time I said good morning when it was definitely afternoon, but people are watching from all over the world, so might as well address all three. Thank you everybody for tuning in. I can see slowly people are dripping in, so that's nice. Today we have another guest on the show that had his very own radio show, hospital radio show, which now translated over to his own podcast named the Yet Unnamed Podcast, if I'm right. We started this a one-on-one interview podcast, and now it's hosted by himself and two others. Besides that successful podcast, he's also quite successful as a photographer, being an official world sports photographer finalist for this year. Ian Barstow, welcome, Ian.
Hello, how are you? Good evening, evening. Good evening.
Well, it's quite the introduction, right?
Yes, I like that. But award-winning, carry on with that all you want. Award-winning is always good.
But I think I nailed it, right? I think I got everything right. First off, maybe you want to go ahead and do a little bit of an introduction yourself, where you're from, background story, and a little bit more about you.
So I'm, it's Ian Barstow, and I present the As Yet Unnamed Podcast, plug for the sign at the back, which is a weekly podcast with myself, Damien Lee, and Darren Antrobus. And it doesn't really have a theme. I know podcasts are meant to have a theme. So yours is marketing and stuff like that. And you're meant to have crime themes and all that sort of stuff. We don't. We're just, people in the UK may know the One Show. I'm not sure how well that travels around the world. Probably not that well, but.
I'm just overseas, but I never heard of it.
No. So it's like a magazine show where they will talk about everything and anything and just random stuff. That's basically what our show is. It's a lot of fun. It's very silly in places. So we discuss the news. We discuss our top fives every single week. We have a different top five. So last night's record that we did was for the top 5 events from the year 2000.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it was a bit of a memory. It was 20 years ago. So that's the podcast. I started in radio back in 15, 20 odd years ago, doing Hospital Radio Pulse with Darren. Darren was on Hospital Radio Pulse on my Tuesday show. I have done some others. I've done some local radio, so FM radio. I've done some internet radio. And now I started my podcast 6 months ago almost.
And how first of all, I'm really curious how the hospital radio, how do you roll into something like that? Is it just genuine interest, and then and the local radio, is that something that's genuine interest, and then
I had never thought of doing radio at all until Damien, who I do the podcast with, I worked with at the time at a telemarketing company, and he said to me, "Come along and have a look and see what you think." And I was so timid at the start. I would sit in the background and I would go on air. I wouldn't go in front of a microphone at all. And then he was like, "No, get on that microphone and get going." And then he created me a little persona, a little character that I could use to do it. And then as soon as I got in front of the microphone, it was like, right, you're not shutting me up at all. I'm going to be on this for ages. Right. And I loved it. It was a brilliant 10, 11 years that I was there. It was so much fun.
Yeah, and then eventually you decided to quit and head on, and so that was, how long ago, basically? So how did it end up? Because I thought that you gradually, sorry.
It ended. The actual station had to unfortunately close down. It was a charity, charitable organisation. It was very difficult to get funding at the time. It was difficult. We would basically, it was at the point where it couldn't run without starting to cost money. Sort of thing.
Yeah. How many Saturdays did we give up going into the local shopping centres and doing like car boot sales, and cake sales, and everything?
Raising money. We even did an X Factor style music singing competition. Money at one point as well.
Oh, all right. So, Darren, you were then also very involved. It wasn't just a one-time thing that you were on, but also very involved into
everybody was really,
success.
everybody's really committed, and you have to be for hospital radio, don't you, Ian? It really is. You're not just there just to produce that, just.
I have no idea how that works. Hospital radio. So the only thing that I can understand is so people that are working in a hospital, big hospitals, they have a local news.
It's very much a UK thing. I don't think.
Oh, all right.
It's in many other places, but most big hospitals in the UK will have a hospital radio station which is run by volunteers, all voluntary work. And it's basically, it broadcasts a very local radio station to patients in the hospital. So your target audience is anybody that's on a ward in a hospital, and they'll listen through, it used to be little plug-in headphones, now it's a communication box. And you basically broadcast to the patients. We broadcast on AM, so we could go out of the hospital, although we could never say we could. But it was a very local thing. But because you were so local, you would go to the ward and say, do you want me to play you a song? And it would just, the idea is that it gives that person in hospital something to cheer them up and listen to if they've not had visitors for a while. So it's a really good thing, and it's
of course, that makes sense. Sorry, I was thinking for kind of like the hospital radio is something for the employees to listen to. Obviously, the people lying.
Some of them you can do, and it does go. They're very professional. They're very professional, so they're all really good presenters. Nearly every single big radio presenter in the UK started their career on a hospital radio station. It's a training ground for radio people. But
it's really a nice thing to hear that something like that is organized, because I can assume a lot of people that are maybe lying for in a hospital a little bit longer can really take health and support out of that.
Yeah, it was really good fun, and it started my love of radio.
All right, and now you have the podcast going on. Do you ever decide to name it in the future, or will it be
it will forever be the As Yet Unnamed Podcast, because all of the branding I've done has that, and I'm not changing.
That makes sense.
I was trying to think of a name that, just a different type of name, and there isn't that many As Yet Unnamed podcasts out there.
That's actually good.
It seems to work.
That's nice. So, I mean, then that means that obviously you have a lot of experience. I mean, podcast, basically in a sense, also something like radio you can do. But basically, radio is online, and there's also some music in between. I don't know if that's fair. That's very black and white to say it like that, but basically, it has similar grounds. So you have a lot of experience within those grounds as well, and during the periods of time, I mean, we want to get down to the value, but possibly people can get with their own podcast and all the own stuff that they do. And what did you notice over those a lot of years of experience, what you seem to really work? And I assume one of those things was the personal touch in connection with people, right?
Definitely. And I think podcasts are a massive thing, and they're a massive ground now. There are so many podcasts out there, so many people. Lockdown that's happened around the world has released so many podcasts on the world, and it's the reason I started it. It was like, well, okay, what can I do? But it's that personal connection that you get, and radio is a very personal, one-on-one experience. So it is you, the presenter, and the listener. When I did training for radio, they always said, speak to the listener, never speak to a group, never go to everybody listening, go to the person that's listening. It's that very personal one-on-one connection. And podcasts are very much the same of that, if not even more personal, because you are in someone's ears as they're walking on a lunchtime, or they're walking the dog, or they're exercising, all that sort of stuff. And it's reignited my love of broadcasting. Definitely. I didn't do any broadcasting for 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. And starting this podcast, for me personally, it's just given me a complete new creative outlet. So I've got my YouTube channel as well, but this is every single week I chat for 2 hours with people that I really, really like and really have a real good laugh and come out feeling after the recording, it's like, that was so much fun.
Yeah, I know, right? But I can totally relate to that. There are two parts. One, the first thing is that Darren and I actually had the same thing, have the same thing still going on. It all started, the way we started podcasting was actually, we met through LinkedIn, and then we had a chat, just genuine interest. And then we had another chat. And then I was like, well, we might as well just record this, right? I mean, we're having fun and we're talking about interesting things and, you know, where the mind goes. When you start talking, you know, the juices start flowing, the mind starts flowing, and then you come up with all of these crazy things, and we, you know, and then you'll just enjoy it. You should. That's the most common mistake maybe that people make as well, is that they do the podcast. You know, it had its peak, and now we know for a long time that a lot of people do podcasts. People start podcasts, you know, but it had its trend, it had its hype. I think now people that genuinely love podcasting just stay to do it, and that's the foundation, obviously, that you love to talk with people about stuff, and that's kind of like the core foundation then, I guess. And the other thing that what I found really interesting was the approach that you said. And the way we're doing it right now, I'm like, you know, I have the feeling that I'm talking to a lot of many people, but basically the way you need to do it is that you have this one person on the other side. Yes, you there on the other side, that you're basically talking to that. And that's, yeah, that's an interesting perspective, actually.
I think it's quite hard, actually, for people to do. If you've never done it before, I think it's a bit of a challenge, isn't it, to imagine this person. Like, but once I think you've got it in your mindset, how do they train you to think like that, Ian?
It's I've only ever done one training course, and it was a 4-day radio course, which never really got me anywhere. But it was some interesting stuff on there. But it's always that instead of saying how is everybody doing, it's like, how are you doing? It's getting into that mindset of having that single, instead of them, it's you, and it's you and me. So how's your day going? Instead of, I'm trying to think of a different way of saying it, but I can't at the minute. But anyway, it's that.
It makes sense.
It's that very, and radio is far more personal than any other type of medium, because it is that instant connection with people. So if you're on a big radio station and you're broadcasting to thousands of people, you've got to do it so you're broadcasting to me sat in my office on a rainy day doing work, having a little bit of entertainment. And it is an interesting, it takes a while to get into it. But as soon as you get it, it helps you in a lot of other things. So I was never this confident in, and as you can tell, I can talk and I can talk and talk and talk, and I can jump off on one. I will do, when I did the radio show, 20-minute links is not unusual. So if I'm not in front of a microphone, I'm quite a different person. It just gives me that little extra sort of, I can get away with saying slightly other things.
Yeah.
And it's knowing people as well. It's knowing who you're. I think Dan will agree with this. When you have to have that right connection of people that you've got in the studio. So if you're doing a studio-based show where you've got lots of people, at some points on a Tuesday we had 5 different other people in the thing, which was slightly too many. But you've got to have that connection, because if you don't quite have that connection, it does get a little awkward. There's silent pauses and all that sort of stuff. But as soon as you get that crew together, and you get those people together that work, you can bounce off people all the time. You can say something and someone will just go, I know what he means, and I'm going to reply back with I know what he needs to carry on.
Yeah, but that also comes down to just having a normal conversation. If it's really forced, it makes it a lot more difficult. You know, you need to talk about stuff that's comfortable to you. When you talk about stuff that's not comfortable to you, then at a moment you're like, well, yeah. You don't really have an opinion or anything to say about that. And it just needs to be relaxed. And that's some of the things, you shouldn't be feeling pressure.
But interesting though, even with your radio background, the medium is still quite new to you, isn't it? As like podcasts, and your podcast is doing quite well, but you're still, like most other people, and for us, we're still growing our audience, and we've only just started doing this the last couple of months and really getting into it now, I suppose. But it is hard, isn't it?
It is very difficult to to get out there, which is why the first interview podcast I did was with Joe Lycett. And again, I don't know if you know Joe. I know Darren will know Joe, but I don't know if he's how big he is. But he's quite a big comedian presenter in the UK. He's done a really big show. And I knew him from Hospital Radio, so he started on my Hospital Radio show. And he told me he was going to be a stand-up comic, and he's now selling tours around the world. But I wanted that first big name to get people's attention and to grab people's attention. And his podcast by far is the biggest listened to podcast I've done so far. So I started off with the interview ones, and I wanted to do one-on-one interviews, and we had, I think it was 12 in the end. Really interesting people. We had Darren on as well. He was all right. You know, he filled a week.
Drag the figures down a bit.
Yeah, he filled a week. He was all right. And then so obviously it was lockdown, and everyone had free time to come and do a podcast and come and do an interview. And then when everything started to reopen up again and people got back to normal, ish, that sort of dried out how easy it was to speak to people. So I wanted to do another type of podcast where it was just me and two other people that just connect and can have a laugh. So yeah, it's really difficult. We're up to, on average, podcast download wise, we're about 50 or so a week. Puts us in the top. What was it I read? If you have more than 100 downloads, you're in the top 20% of podcasts in the world, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So many of them. You don't need a massive audience. It's like, we're almost there. We're almost top 20%. But because we broadcast on, so we do the live show on Facebook. So we do live show on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch every Wednesday. So last night's one, we had a total across the whole 2 hours of about 250 odd different views across that total 2 hours. So that then equates very slowly. The Facebook page is going up. We push on Facebook constantly, as people that friend me on Facebook will know. But it's that whole, you've got to keep pushing. You've got to keep getting it in front of people to get them, that one person to download it and go, I love that. I'm going to tell my friend to go and listen to that. It's finding that audience. And yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's fun. We'll get there.
Yeah, and I think as long as it's fun, I mean, it all depends on what it is you want to achieve, right? And then it's
world domination.
Yeah, well, basically that's to say I have my own company. So no, but basically I think it's just consistency and how much of an effort you want to put into it. And if you really want to make it big, then you need to put more effort into it. And then it's just keeping consistency and trying out new things. And then eventually you see what works and try out different concepts. You know, there are so many ways that you can do these podcasts or live interviews or whatever. There's so many things to make it more interesting. So actually, Darren, we never thought about Twitch, but that might be an interesting channel as well to investigate.
Yeah, it's really growing, isn't it? We won't spend too much time, but we can talk about it on another one. But yeah, Twitch is really interesting. It's really big in the music scene, like live music and stuff. I do live music in the whatever spare time I get. And it's really massive now on Twitch. Twitch is really growing now as a big channel. So if you are a podcast host and you're not using all the available channels, then Twitch is definitely a good one. But like LinkedIn, we were just saying off air, is you might be able to find a little route through to doing LinkedIn live as well. So,
I never even knew LinkedIn did a live.
Yeah, you have to be confirmed and allowed as a special person to. Yeah, well, it makes sense. It's they don't want to overload the system right away. But when we're talking about hobbies anyway,
lovely
Ian?
segue. That's a good segue. I tell you what, that's 10 out of 10. That one.
Yeah. Right. Well, you gave me the lead, so that was really nice. You do photography on the side, and you are a finalist in sport as a sport photographer of the year. So. How?
There you go.
Look at that. There it is.
It wasn't planned, but it is. I don't know if. Hang on. Let me.
Yeah. I think.
Yeah, you can see that. So that was the.
Well, if I will resize this. Look at that. There we go.
Slightly out of focus because of my camera, but that's not the picture. The picture is in focus. But yeah, it was. So I've done. When did I started photography? Probably about 7 or 8 years ago. Just as a hobby, as nothing more. I got myself a camera, enjoyed taking pictures. And then it was it's something. If you are a photographer and you get into photography, it's very expensive, but it's also something again that it's like every time you go somewhere, you've got to take your camera, take loads of pictures, and get that one. So that photo that I just showed you is from the British Superbike Championships at Donington Park last April-ish, I think it was. And I've been to Donington Park is my local race circuit. It's only 25 minutes away, so I get there as much as I can. I can not this much this year because of obviously everything that's been shut down. And I love nothing more than spending a day walking around the racetrack, being with the bikes, being with the cars, and just literally I will take 2,500 photos every time I go to a racetrack.
Oh yeah. And
then you've got to sit through, and it's obviously you do the editing and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't pay very often at all. I went to an event at Donington a couple of weeks ago, which was an amateur track day or amateur race day. And you manage to catch crashes. And the people that crash, they get up and walk away, which is always good. But they like photos of crashes. The cyclists or the riders like pictures of them coming off their bike.
Wow.
To sell. So I've sold some, but that particular image is one of my favorites. It was.
Can you show it again? There's some new people joining in. I just wanted to make sure that everybody sees it.
I'll tell you what. Oh no, actually, bear with me. Sorry, this is on air, but I'm just going to use this and turn the blur background video off.
Look at that.
There we go. That's better. So that's 6. There we go. 5 bikers. And I put myself there for probably about half an hour. And every single time they came round, they were getting slightly closer and closer. And I was thinking, there's going to be a point where they're going to be in line. And that was the only time I saw that. And it's just the angle that I'm at and the angle they're at just makes them look like they're in a nice, very close packed thing. Yeah. I entered that just online in this photography competition. And then found out that
I just put it online and then there you go.
Yeah, it was. I just entered it. You could just enter, I think it was 20 photos, and then thought nothing else of it because it's open to everybody all around the world, professionals, unprofessionals. And then I got an email saying, "Yep, you're one of the top 100 images." And then you look at the people that you're entered with and you're alongside, and they are chief photographers for Getty Images in Australia, chief photographers for Getty Images in America. These are proper professional. You'd have seen their photos all around the world on back pages and front pages and all that sort of stuff. And my little image of motorbikes was in the top 100. I didn't win, but I was more than happy. I'm going to bank off that for a long time.
I just want to say that you have to start somewhere, and basically you're a finalist, so you can say that.
Oh yeah, and it's on the bottom of my email and on my website. It will be for a long time. And then the other 2 I've got are, you can just see them now. I was the UK Picture Editor Guild Awards, which is the national newspaper picture editors. It's their association. And they had awards where you could enter photos for it. And I was a finalist 2 years on the row on that one. I managed to go down to London, a very nice bow tie type black tie dinner at a very posh hotel. And it was a nice night out of drinking and very nice food.
But I guess it's a very nice hobby, and you're very successful at it then, at the photography. So
I like people tell me I do good photos. I just can't turn it into a profession because it doesn't pay at the minute. Unless you're willing to do wedding photography, which I'm not going to do because I can't think of anything worse than being at other people's weddings. Unless you do that sort of photography, it's another one that's very difficult to make a living at because everybody has a smartphone.
Yeah, nowadays
they can take a photo as good on a smartphone, and sometimes you can, but sometimes you want that professional photographer. But yeah, it's a really good hobby. I really enjoy it. It's one of my
and that's what it's about. As long as you enjoy all the stuff that you do, all these hobbies, and if you can make some money off of it, then that's great. And if you can, at the same time you enjoy it anyway, so it's a good thing either way. So one of the other things that I wanted to ask was about your writing an audio play podcast. So what is that? What is that all about?
I was right. I'll tell you. It's so the podcast is or the audio was called or is called. You're going to ask me to it. Hang on a second. I've forgotten what I called it. That's how much I've done on it recently. I won't give it a name. So basically, it was an event that happened.
Audio play podcast.
Yeah, audio play podcast. It was it's about an event that happens that changes the world for everybody. It's not a pandemic. It's not a virus. It's not zombies. It's not any of that sort of stuff. But it is something that changes the world for everybody and sends the world into chaos. And I did the first episode, which I thought would be. I read that it was like 1 page per minute of audio. And I know this person that's written for the Doctor Who radio plays and the Doctor Who audio plays. And he starred in film and he's written plays and films and stuff like that. So I sent it to him and he sent me a really nice email, which basically told me, you've got a lot of work to do on this. Go away.
Oh, ouch.
It was very well done. And he did say to me, how honest do you want me to be? Because I can be very honest with you. And I said, no, be very honest with me. And he gave me this whole list of stuff that he says, right, okay, you're doing that wrong. You're doing that wrong. That's wrong as well. But I'd never done anything like it before. And it was like, I did 26.
But then it's really valuable. All right. I mean, as negative as it sounds, as negative as it gets, actually the only thing that you can do is learn from it. So that's the whole thing. You can. Yeah. It would be amazing if you do it great off the bat. But that is one of the reasons that it's now on the site. Then.
Yeah, it's there. It's probably something I will come to at some point in the future. But it's an idea, and I like the story. It's an interesting story for me, whether or not people would like it. But it's a case of if I've got the script, I then need people to come and record it for me and do the voices because I can't do voice acting.
Okay, so basically it's kind of like an audio show then, or is it really? It's a returning audio show every week.
Yeah, the idea was that it would be a series of like Radio 4 in the UK, they do their plays. So it's like a play, but it was going to be in a podcast form. And it would be every week so it's probably going to be 10 or 12 episodes. The first series would be the idea. Whether or not it comes to fruition, we will see. But it's something I'm working on.
I think it's really interesting because despite, when you look at things like Hollywood movies, I think it was on your Twitter feed the other day, or somebody was saying that one of the worst films ever. I can't think of the name of it now. It was the one that was in the sea. Westworld, was it?
Yeah,
that's it. It was one of the worst films at the time. The critics said, but apparently now it's got cult status as is a film that everybody has to watch. So maybe your podcast might have cult status.
Maybe. I'm not sure it'll win awards, but you never know. My dream when I was writing, I was sat there at night on my iPad writing away, typing on the iPad, and it was like, yeah, do you know what? This is going to be picked up by the BBC. It's going to be made into a night drama. I'm going to be famous. I'm going to make loads of money. And then it was like, no, it's rubbish. Go away, start again.
Yeah, this is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong.
Everything's in the third person and the first person, and then you're not. You've got the script like you're narrating it, and he says, "Don't narrate it. Let them tell you." And it's a lot of interesting stuff that I need to go back and work on and revisit.
And I think you showed it to one person. Let's be honest. If it's one person's opinion, and they might have some experience, but then you're also putting it towards a critic someone that has a lot of experience. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff to take from it.
He has done. He wrote a recent Doctor Who audio. So there's a Big Fish Productions. They do all of the audio stuff for Doctor Who. So all of their audio. So a lot of the doctors come back and do different stories, and they're all these audio plays. And he wrote, I think he's written 2 of them, but I know he's written one recently. So he definitely knows his stuff for audio broadcasts, and audio plays. But yeah, I will work on it at some point.
Yeah,
so I'm going to ask you, what podcast do you listen to? What do you think some of the best ones that are out there?
I listen to a lot of BBC stuff, which they're just everywhere, and they do it. So newscast I listen to every day. I think it's a really good podcast to just listen to in the morning because they go into in depth, and I love politics and news. I will take in all of the information I can. So newscast, Americast, which is really interesting at the moment because obviously the American elections are massive, affect everybody all around the world, all that sort of stuff. But I also listen to, I'll tell you actually, let me go into my podcast feed. Let's have a look at my library. Redbox Politics podcast. There you go. Yeah, David Tennant does a podcast. If no one's listened to that, he's very good at them.
What was his name?
David Tennant, Doctor Who. So you play Doctor Who. Friday night comedy podcast, Talk Art, Brain Bites. See, I do subscribe to you. You are on there. Just there. You are already watching. Infinite Monkey Cage is very good if you like your science stuff. And then Stephen Fry, 7 Deadly Sins, which was fascinating. So I have a real mix, but I never have enough time to listen to all of them. That is the problem.
That's true. That's always the thing with podcasts. It's kind of like you need to find this convenient time to listen to it. I have the same thing. I'll listen to it. Actually, the only time when I'm walking outside.
That's the same. When I take the dog for a walk, I'll listen to a podcast. And when I go for a walk at lunchtime, I'll listen to the podcast as well. So I get about 40 minutes a day.
It's not something that I can do. Some people do it during work. I cannot do that. I need to actively listen to it and consume the information. Well, basically, it depends on what kind of podcast you're listening to. Obviously, the ones that I listen to are very improving podcast or about business. So I really want to take that takeaway and learn something of it that those people tell, and take my own opinion of it. But basically, it's less than before, actually.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Go on. No, go on, Dan.
I was going to ask you about your photography. So what's going to be next on your horizon for the photography? What do you want to do next?
I'd love to get into motorsport and probably do a bit more sport. Obviously, at the moment, we can't. We've been lucky enough. I've been back at the motorsport track a couple of times this year because it's a massive open space. So I'd like to try some other motorsport photography. I really enjoy portrait photography. I'm doing some more and more of that. But I don't know if I'd ever be able to turn it professional at the moment. And it's one of those things. And I think I can't remember if I talked about this with you, Dan. It's one of the regrets. It's like you forget. I'd love to have done radio, and if I've pushed myself when I was younger, I probably could have done radio as a full-time job. I'd love to have done photography if I'd have started it, but now because I've got a proper job and I've got proper, you got a wage coming in, you got bills going out. I can't afford to not work and just go, do you know what, I'm going to do photography and hope it pays. So I need to win the lottery. So I can just do what I want to do. That's what it is.
or build up in your spare time. Obviously, it's always kind of like how much you want to invest and what you want to make out of it. But it's obviously very difficult. I could definitely imagine for something like as a creative, as a piece of picture, to sell that is a little bit of next level, obviously. But you have to start somewhere.
I can sell it. I sell photos of motorsport events for £2.50 each.
Seriously?
Yeah, and I've tried it. So we have an Ironman event that comes through where I live, and they're on the bikes and they come down this big hill. So this makes really good pictures. And I tried the first year to sell them for £5 a photo, which I thought was quite reasonable.
Yeah.
And then it was like that didn't really sell well. So I tried sort of £3.50. That didn't work very well. I'll do it at £2.50. I've sold about 100 photos, which is a nice little earner, but you have to sell a lot of photos at £2.50 to make any money, and that's the problem. People aren't prepared to pay for them. That's the challenge that lots of photographers are facing, and it's really difficult to.
It's a very competitive world.
Oh yeah, very very competitive. And then radio is another thing. There is no money in it because, particularly in the UK, radio now is very play as much music as you can and don't talk, which is not the radio I'm interested in. I would be no good on a station where I could talk twice an hour. Just wouldn't suit me at all.
Yeah, then maybe keeping it as a hobby isn't that great. Isn't that bad of an idea? Or maybe find a way to do it a little bit all differently. I don't know.
Well, yeah, and then obviously I've got my YouTube. I had my YouTube payment yesterday. Hey!
How much did you get?
Every couple of months, 60 quid.
How much did you get? You're straightly asked.
Straight in for the money question. Yeah, it's about it works out as about £30 a month off YouTube, which is better than nothing.
I know.
Again, it's one of those things I'd wish I started it 10 years ago when it was still bubbling along and it was you get in early and you build your audience.
So you have experience within those fields. So if you would give the people watching, the people listening later on the audio track itself, one tip that you think, that's something that you should really put to good use, or really that you should do, what would that be?
Just go for it. Just try it. If you don't try it, you'll never know. You'll never. I'm telling myself advice I should have told myself years ago, but just try it.
Yeah, but that's the experience, right? That's why it's trying.
Just try it. Just go out and do it, and make sure you enjoy it. If it's ever a chore, stop it, because it's not going. You're never going to give 100% to something that is a chore to do.
That's true.
You've got to enjoy what you do, be that a podcast, a YouTube videos, streaming online and doing your game streaming, which is massive as an area. Photography. If you don't enjoy doing it and it feels like it's proper work, unless you're getting paid a proper wage for it, just move on to the next thing. That would be my advice.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah.
I think that's there's nothing to add to that. It really comes down to doing something that you love. Otherwise, you won't hold it unless you're getting paid for it. But you might as well enjoy it. And there are always things that you can not like about something that you need to do. But it's about the global thing. So if
not many people really enjoy work. I'm sure there isn't hundreds of people. I'm sure people don't go to work every day and bounce out of the door and go, "Yeah, I'm going to go in an office for 8 hours." I know I don't.
Yeah, that's one of the big things. It is that a lot of people don't enjoy what they do, and that's really sad, actually. But it's finding ways to make it work, to eventually do what it is you want to do. But it all starts from you doing what you love and then spending the time into it.
Yes, and in this time next year, people will know the As Yet Unnamed podcast, and we will be world famous.
That's what I wanted to ask next. I mean, what is where can they find you online? And so you already.
So it's if you want to find out about the podcast, it's the As Yet Unnamed Podcast.uk. That's the As Yet Unnamed Podcast.uk. You can find us on Facebook with the same name. On Twitter, we are at As Yet Unnamed Pod. And if you go onto YouTube and search at Ian HRP, then you'll find my YouTube channel on there. And then my photography, last plug, is dracottphotography.co.uk. And you can go and have a look at the work that I've put out.
What was it? What was the plug for Dracott?
Yeah, so dracottphotography.co.uk.
I'll make sure I put all of these links in the show notes. That's the broadcaster's official term. So
the bit down there.
That's it, the bit down there. Go on, read it now. Go and start clicking on them.
And click there. Support there.
Yeah, there, and there.
Right.
Like, comment, share.
Yeah. Well, definitely. Like, comment, and share. Well, people listening, definitely go subscribe to Ian and what he does, so that he can make a living out of it. Come on. Do it, man.
Do it.
Go. Thank you so much. Everybody, if you liked this live session, definitely tune in next time as well. Subscribe to our channels. We're on multiple channels. And also, if you want to listen to the audio version, you can do that as well. It's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and other big audio platforms. Ian, thank you so much for the great talk up today. I hope you enjoyed it. We definitely did. Well, I did. Darren, I think, as well.
No,
I can never really tell with Darren.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.